Hello, everyone. How are we all doing? I am Chris, back once again with another James Bond review. Tonight we are talking about Tomorrow Never Dies, which is the 1997 spy film, 18th film in the James Bond franchise, directed by Roger Spottiswoode and starring the one and only Pierce Brosnan in his second of four films. We are pretty much halfway already through Brosnan's career as Bond, which is absolutely crazy. And then, of course, we're on to the Daniel Craig ones. It's interesting to note, actually. I go off my Odeon app, right? I'm an Odeon member. That's sort of like my local cinema that I go to the most. They've had each one of these Bond films scheduled since like all the way back in April, like every Tuesday, and I think some weekends as well. You could book all the way through up till Brosnan's film at like the end of September or whenever it's going to be, but they still haven't got the Daniel Craig ones on there yet, which is making me wonder if they're going to. I imagine they will play them. It's really weird if they don't, especially because I genuinely really want to see Casino Royale on the big screen. And then following that, Quantum of Solace will be the only other Bond film that I haven't seen on the big screen because Skyfall through to No Time to Die with the main Bond films that I actually saw at the cinema. Hey, we've got Carl. How you doing, man? Carl says, I actually watched this one at Odeon tonight as well. That's epic, man. That's really, really cool. Okay, we're on the same wavelength for this one. We're on the same page with it. This is going to be a really fun one to talk about tonight. I will warn you guys, I am exceptionally tired. It's been a very long day today, but hopefully my love of Bond carries me through and I can be a little bit more animated than my typical lethargic, sleepy self. But before we get into the review, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so for movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. There's going to be plenty more on the way, as well as potential early screener for something, which I'm not at liberty to say what it is just yet, but it will be very, very fun. And I'm looking forward to it, suffice to say. So for more information on that, follow me on my Twitter. You can find me at Hobbit Fan Editor. I'll post all the times that I go live for any of my live streams, whether it's James Bond reviews or if maybe something else will come along and take my fancy. We're getting dangerously close to the Rings of Power. I think the new Game of Thrones show, what's it called? House of the Dragon starts at the end of the month. So there might be reviews on that stuff as well in September, so do subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter for there, and once I'm at liberty to divulge what that early screener is, I will post that on my channel as well, but I can't do it yet, so I'll let you guys know. And of course, if you've seen Tomorrow Never Dies, if you've seen it on the big screen, if you haven't seen it on the big screen but you still want to tell me your opinion on the film, then please feel free to do so. Obviously, we've got the live chat going right now. If you're discovering this video after it's all said and done, please do drop me a comment because I like chatting to you guys. And of course, next week, it's going to be The World Is Not Enough, 1999. Going to party like it's 1999. Maybe we will, because it's there's definitely a lot to talk about with that James Bond film for sure. I think it's a fan favorite as well. So that's Tuesday, the 23rd of August. I can't believe we're going to be at the end of August already. And that's 11:30 British Standard Time once again. Okay, that's the preamble done. Carl says, I heard tonight the Craigs won't be playing. A Bond fan was kicking off about it. Oh, okay. That's, that would explain why they haven't scheduled them all, from like months ago, but that's going to really piss off my OCD. And it's really annoying because I genuinely really wanted to see Casino Royale because that's one of my favorite Bond films. Wow, they're going to end this cinematic experience off with Die Another Day? Shit. Okay. Well, regardless of that, these Bond reviews will continue. I know the whole idea of these is that I've already reviewed these films before, whether you've checked those videos out or not, or you probably haven't, but I have already talked about the Bond films ad nauseum. So the reason that I was doing this is because I enjoy watching, they've released them on the big screen this year, and I've never seen the majority of them on the big screen. I love watching older films on the big screen, and it's a chance for me to kind of reevaluate some of them. Maybe my opinions may have changed on them, and I was hoping that was going to be the case with some of the Daniel Craig ones, and just to see some of them on the big screen. So that's a shame. So hopefully, I mean, they've got a few weeks to reconsider, haven't they? So hopefully that's the case. Or I don't know. Would there be any other cinemas playing them? I'm not sure. Odeon tend to get most films, so that's very strange. I don't know the ins and outs of that. I don't know why they're not allowed to screen those, but nonetheless, the reviews on the channel will continue, and I will still review, because I will review all the Daniel Craig films. Or maybe Odeon cinemas know that the Craig films aren't up to snuff all that much. So they've just avoided them. Let's just avoid the issue. Okay, so Tomorrow Never Dies. Let's get into it. So I watched this film. This is my second time watching this film, by the way. I watched this film for the first time last year. Last year, I had never seen any of the Pierce Brosnan. Well, I'd never seen any of the. Hadn't seen the final two Roger Moore films. I hadn't seen the two Dalton films, and I hadn't seen the four Brosnan films. So there was like this whole, like, the end of the era of Bond films, coming up into the modern age that I hadn't watched before. So I was watching them sort of like once a week last year, and GoldenEye was massively hyped up. Everyone loves GoldenEye; it's a fan favorite. And then the ones in the middle, everyone kind of talks about the first and the last Brosnan films for very different reasons. Everyone seems to love GoldenEye. Everyone hates, or maybe doesn't hate, but it's a guilty pleasure film with Die Another Day. And then the ones in the middle, Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough, really kind of seem interchangeable for a lot of people. And Tomorrow Never Dies is, out of those two films that I just mentioned, is certainly the one that's talked about the least, I want to say. Honestly, not many people, it doesn't come up in conversation all that much, and I don't know why, because I think it's a really, really solid Bond film. Now, last week when I watched GoldenEye, don't get me wrong, well, obviously, first and foremost, go and check out my review on it. It was a really good review. I enjoyed talking about it. Great crowd as well last time. I really enjoy GoldenEye. I think it's very entertaining. I think GoldenEye's main strength is its cast of characters. I don't think there is a single weak character in that entire film, be it side character, villain, henchman, everyone. Everything's firing on all cylinders with GoldenEye in terms of its characters. There's something about the feel of the film, and I think maybe it could be down to the soundtrack, or just the fact that I love License to Kill so much that it's kind of like the Diamonds Are Forever thing that I've mentioned before, way back at the start of the year, where every single time I've watched the James Bond films has been in sequence, has been in chronological order. So right before Diamonds Are Forever, you've got the incredible On Her Majesty's Secret Service, that when you get to Diamonds Are Forever, which even still, I mentioned when I did the review for it, seeing it on the big screen, that I came around to it a little bit more, and I enjoyed it probably the most that I ever had before. Watching it again on the big screen. And I found a lot more positives in it and a lot more things that I enjoyed. But nonetheless, coming off the heels of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is one of the best Bond films ever made, into Diamonds Are Forever, which is definitely one of the weakest Bond films, it feels all the more so because you've literally just watched an amazing film beforehand. And I don't know, maybe that was the case with GoldenEye for me this next time round. And I'd seen GoldenEye before, I'd seen GoldenEye a bunch of times before, but because I just seen License to Kill on the big screen, my favorite Bond film of all time, to then go to GoldenEye, I'm like, well, yeah, it's fun, but it's not. I don't like it as much as this other one that's come before it. So maybe that's what I had a really weird experience with GoldenEye last time. I'm like, I enjoy it, it's fun, but I don't think everyone holds GoldenEye up to such a level, like such a huge level, and I enjoy it, but I just don't see it at that level that everyone else does, despite the fact that it's got a great cast of characters and there are some genuinely pretty cool set pieces in there. And Tomorrow Never Dies, no one talks about it, and honestly, I love this film. I think in terms of, oh God, I might piss a lot of people off with saying this. I think out of the two, which film am I most entertained by, GoldenEye or Tomorrow Never Dies? It's probably GoldenEye, and I think that is down to the characters. But if we're looking at sort of film structure and the ingredients of what go into a Bond film, this Tomorrow Never Dies feels much more like a classic Bond film to me than GoldenEye does. It really genuinely has all of the ingredients that you come to expect from, all your classic vintage Bond films. It's got your tall, muscle-bound, blonde, Germanic henchman. It's got a submarine. It's got a, megalomaniacal Bond villain. It's got all the gadgets. It's got the women, it's got the set pieces. It really genuinely has. It's got the one-liners. It does feel like a modern equivalent of a classic Roger Moore Bond film. And I think I gravitate towards that stuff more because it just feels more like a Bond film to me. But as I said, I think that GoldenEye probably is the more entertaining one. I think Tomorrow Never Dies, I think the second act suffers a little bit. I think it gets a little bit slower in the second act. The first act's fantastic. It's just right out of the gate. I really enjoy the third act stuff on the submarine. Some of the set design, some of the set builds are really, really cool. I don't think it's... from a cinematography standpoint, I don't think it's one of the most beautiful James Bond films to look at. It's quite bare bones. There aren't really any moments where the set pieces completely dazzle you, or the landscapes or anything like that. But nonetheless, like when everything's like blowing up at the end and you've got like the metal walkways, and I was watching that thinking like, my God, someone actually like had to build all of this. One of my favorite set pieces in the film, and probably one of my favorite action set pieces in all the Bond films, is the chase over the rooftops, the motorbike chase with a helicopter and everything. And I'm looking at this motorbike navigating all over these gangplanks and rooftops and everything. I'm thinking, my God, someone like had to build all of this, and the planning that would have to go into it, and which way the bike's got to navigate. And it's all in camera, and it looks fantastic. And I'll talk more about that set piece later on because, it's the first time that I watched that last year. It absolutely just outstanding. I thought it was outstanding. Completely blew me away. And especially watching it on the big screen again tonight, it had, exactly the same effect to me. Let's see, we've got a comment here. Carl says the opening action scene didn't have a patch on Top Gun Maverick, did it? I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up as well. Yeah, very Top Gun, isn't it? Yeah, especially nowadays. Yeah. And granted, there's like a lot of years in between, but Maverick's just taken the whole world by storm, hasn't it? So any time that we see any film before or after now that has any kind of aerial combat in it, we're good. It's, there's like before Christ and Anno Domini. It's going to be like before Top Gun Maverick and after Top Gun Maverick. Yeah. And speaking of which, Top Gun Maverick's still making money. It's still making bank. I think it's on like 1.37 billion last time I checked. So, I'm assuming it's been released in all territories now. But that's a hell of a takeaway, just as a side tangent while we're talking about it. So, yeah, love that film. And I want it to keep making money. But let's start with the opening action scene, actually, because it's so awesome. It's so awesome. And I tell you what, like, not to go on too much of a tangent, because I want to kind of compartmentalize this review if I can, although it very much is a stream of consciousness, as it usually is. The change of composer really does wonders for this film. Can you imagine if Eric Serra was doing the soundtrack to this film again? David Arnold coming on board is such a breath of fresh air for this franchise and the music, especially like the modern era of Bond. And it just makes me wonder about like the whole GoldenEye stuff. Like if someone did an edit and put David Arnold's score over that film, I genuinely think it would completely transform that film for me. And I'd probably love it even more than I do already now. But the opening action scene of Tomorrow Never Dies, I think is one of the best. It's fucking awesome. It's Bond being a one-man army, which is great to watch. It's a ticking clock. It's, this adventure. It just can't, throws you into this moment, which is what a great pre-title sequence should do. It's almost like a little mini adventure. It's almost like a little mini short film, isn't it? Before the main feature kicks in. The soundtracks going 10 to the dozen. Bond with the plane. This is what I mentioned last time. In that moment in GoldenEye, in the pre-title sequence where he jumps off the runway after the plane, and he gets inside the plane and he's trying to pull up the plane. It's almost going to crash and it dips off camera. There's that moment of silence. And then the plane comes roaring up out of camera and he's absolutely fine. I mentioned last week, that's where you needed the soundtrack to kick in. That's where you needed your James Bond fanfare to boom, come right in there. And it didn't. And it was in utter silence. And it just really took the impact of that scene away. compared to this with David Arnold, who's smart, he knows exactly when to use the James Bond theme. I actually forgot how many times it plays during this film. You can tell that David Arnold's having a wonderful time composing this. It's a dream come true. I think before this, he made an album, didn't he, of Bond covers. I think there was loads of different people covering all the vocals and everything. I think he'd made new arrangements for some of the Bond themes. Let me try and find the name of that album real quick, because I still haven't listened to that album, and I really need to. Shaken and Stirred, the David Arnold James Bond project. It's a title that says exactly what it is on the tin, doesn't it? Really. And that's how he got the gig for this. They did reach out to John Barry, and John Barry didn't want to come back for it, and he actually recommended David Arnold based on his album that he did of the covers, and the music's just outstanding. And when there's a similar moment in this pre-title sequence where, you know, there's an explosion and they all think that Bond's dead, and then the plane comes roaring out of the fire cloud, and then the Bond fanfare kicks in, and it's just like, this is what it's all about. There's one-liners aplenty. It's Bond in peril, ticking clock, saving the day, doing what he does, getting out of there, because Bond always lives, damn it. He will find a way out of every situation, every single situation. Bear that in mind. We will come back to that. I'm not letting that go. I'm not letting it go. So yeah, I absolutely fucking love the pre-title sequence. It's easily one of my favorites, and I'm already thinking ahead to next week as well, because next week's got a very long pre-title sequence actually. I think it's one of the longest. Well, until No Time to Die came along, and the title sequence doesn't land until 25 minutes into the film, which is absolutely just utterly ridiculous. But anyway, I'm not going to harp too much on that film just yet. There will be a time in a few weeks' time. There will be time for No Time to Die. Anyway, let's get into this. So I want to talk about Pierce Brosnan again. Now, usually I only really talk about, you know, the lead, you know, the character of Bond in his first outing, because that's the one where it's really worth talking about, the first and the last. But I wanted to talk about Pierce Brosnan in this one, because to me, this is probably Brosnan's strongest. I'm going to have to wait till next week for The World Is Not Enough, because I think he's actually pretty good in that too. But I actually think that Pierce Brosnan is more at home as Bond in this one than he was in GoldenEye. He's great in GoldenEye, don't get me wrong. I do really enjoy Pierce Brosnan's performance as Bond, but you could tell maybe there was a bit of nervousness there, you know, taking on the role as Bond. It was his first film, or not his first film, but it was his first outing as Bond, huge shoes to fill, and the legacy that comes with it. And he was great in GoldenEye, but it seemed like he wasn't sure of himself, of his character, of his persona of Bond. In this one, I think he nails it. I think there's always that transitionary film with a lot of the James Bond actors before they completely find their footing with it and they get comfortable. To me, Connery found that with From Russia with Love. You could even argue Goldfinger, because that was the more commercial one. That was the Bond formula and everything. George Lazenby doesn't count because he only had the one, but it would have been interesting to see how he would have developed in future films. Roger Moore, to me, didn't become Roger Moore Bond until The Spy Who Loved Me, his third film. Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun feel very much like they're still writing Bond for Sean Connery rather than doing it for Roger Moore. And then when The Spy Who Loved Me came in, it was like, oh, okay, this is Roger Moore's tour de force of a film. Then, of course, you get Timothy Dalton, and I always said that The Living Daylights, you know, he is great in there, and we do see that darker side of Bond, but they still throw a lot of the comedic stuff in there, and he's a lot more quippy in that one. But boom, by License to Kill, they get it. They go with the more darker, more violent Bond, which is exactly what Timothy Dalton's Bond was. And the same with this one. Like, Pierce Brosnan was great in GoldenEye, but he feels like he comes into his own a lot more in this one. He's a lot more quippy, you know, wearing the suit, just getting stuck in the action. Like, he is a one-man army in this film, especially when you get to that third act as well. And it's one of my favorite images of Bond in this film. He is just like gun toting, you know, just with the gun strap, and he's got like this kind of, you know, confident pose. He's just machine gunning everything, and it's great to watch. He's absolutely incredible in this film. I'm gonna have to wait till next week because I remember the whole Electra stuff with Bond is actually really, really good. Um, I'm going to kind of go off on a bit of a tangent here, and I'm going to bring in some of the Bond girls as well, because I remember talking about this film last year on a different channel. um, Everyone was really negative about Terry Hatcher's character as Paris Carver, the villain's wife in this film. And honestly, I don't see it. Like, she's perfectly serviceable as that Bond girl that always gets killed. You know, there's one that makes it all the way through, like the ally, and then there's one who's usually a villain or is defecting from the villains and always dies. You know, that's always the Bond formula when it comes to the Bond girls. And I think she's great. The music, especially, there's almost like a kind of love theme that plays during the Terry Hatcher and Pierce Brosnan stuff, and that's actually one of my favorite songs on the entire soundtrack. I don't know the name of it, but it's this really beautiful melody that kicks in about 2 or 3 times during the film, and it's a really lovely piece of music that David Arnold produced for that. I like their banter. I like that she's this spurned lover that genuinely, really had a connection with Bond. She says like, "Oh, did I get too close to you?" And I actually forgot that was a part of the Bond character within this film. I didn't think that Brosnan really went to those depths. You know, the more darker, introspective, change. Just absolute alcoholic Bond that's carrying all of these demons. I never really associate that with Pierce Brosnan's Bond. And then there's the moment in this film where he's sat in the hotel room and he's just knocking back Smirnoff vodka like it's water. And then she mentions like, "Oh, did I get too close?" And he carries a lot of demons and all the women around him keep dying. Completely forgot that they went there with Brosnan's. But so that's really cool that they kind of showed that even Brosnan, in a way, although it's a small scene in the film, did get to show that darker side of Bond. And he does look he's sat in the chair waiting for someone to come in and try and murder him. And he's in pain. He's just been beaten up. So he's knocking back the drink to try and numb the pain and of his injuries and everything. And probably just to try and get through the job. And that is the antithesis of the Bond character to me, is this really genuinely like tortured guy that's going through all of this stuff. And yeah, it was cool to see Brosnan go into that. I think they maybe dip their toe in the water of that in the next film as well, because I think in the next film there's kind of a reference to Tracy again, like the death that, he was married once and a woman who he was very near and dear to died. And I think, if I remember rightly, there's a reference to that in The World Is Not Enough. So I'm looking forward to seeing that again, because I always love when they go to that stuff with the Bond character. But Terry Hatcher, I think she was absolutely fine. I did a little bit of reading and I found out that she was actually 3 months pregnant when she filmed this, which, creative camera angles, like you couldn't tell. I think the only reason she was in this film probably is because I think around that time she was voted like the world's sexiest woman or something like that. So, I mean, of course, if you've got that, we've got to get her in a Bond film. Of course we have. But I think that Pierce Brosnan and Terry Hatcher really didn't get on. I did a bit of reading, and apparently Terry Hatcher was, I don't know if she was constantly late to set or if it was just one day where she was late to set. And I get the impression that Pierce Brosnan was really angry about that and really laid into her about that. And then after that, she says, well, the reason that I was late was because I was pregnant, and he wasn't aware that she was pregnant. And then he felt really bad and they apologized. And apparently they made up and all was forgiven. But I did hear rumors that there was some animosity on set between the two of them. And I've even heard people say that comes through in their performance, that they don't have good chemistry together. And I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I think he has more chemistry with Terry Hatcher's character in this film than he does with Michelle Yeoh's character. I will say that. Which actually, yeah, let's talk about Michelle Yeoh in this film. Incredible actress. I absolutely love Michelle Yeoh, and I love how she always wants to get stuck in with the stunt work as well. I mean, Christ Almighty, if you watch her in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, she's absolutely incredible, and that probably still is my favorite film of hers. She's done a film recently, hasn't she? Which I know a lot of people are talking about. I always forget the title of it. Let me just let me remind myself of it. Everything Everywhere All at Once. I've heard that's meant to be genuinely fantastic, and I still haven't watched it yet. So that is on my list of films to catch up with from this year, definitely. but she's brilliant, and I love how she always throws herself into a role as well. And apparently she wanted to do all of her own stunts in this film. She wanted to do absolutely everything, but I think the producers and everything eventually had to overrule her on some of them because the insurance wouldn't cover it. So I don't know how much of, her was actually on the bike, in the scene where that's actually, I think that's just a really creative action set piece, and just like where you find your two protagonists in there. They're constantly like bickering back and forth and everything, and trying to one up each other. And the two of them are handcuffed, and they're on this bike, and she's having to like reposition herself, and she's having to like grip the clutch or whatever it is, or the brake on the bike, and then she's got to pivot round and sit in front of Bond so she can see who's pursuing them, and she's picking up weapons and everything. And it's such a cool action set piece, and I love how they put they put the two characters handcuffed together, because I think that really added to the creativity of the whole stakes of that action set piece. And don't get me wrong, like there is some all right back and forth there, but there's not much chemistry there, in my opinion. And there's also just not a lot to Wei Lin's character. She's just kind of like a skilled agent of like the Chinese Ministry of Defense or whatever it is, or of security, whatever it happens to be. And she's great at what she does. And, you get her in the fight scenes, and she's bloody fantastic, with her martial art moves and everything. I do love that moment where Jonathan Pryce takes the piss out of the martial arts, though. That is quite a funny moment. I forgot about that. He's just like really offensive, and he's just like, whoa, whoa, and he's like doing, all of that stuff as he does. We'll get on to Jonathan Pryce in a second. But yeah, like Michelle Yeoh's fine. Like, if you cast her, she's going to show up. She's going to do a damn good job of the action scenes and the fighting, which she absolutely does. But as a Bond girl, there isn't much chemistry there, I don't think, with Bond. And then the film ends in typical like old school Bond fashion, where they're about to get rescued, and it's like, oh, shall we get rescued? No, let's stay undercover. And then he starts necking off with the Bond girl. But I don't feel like the chemistry was there to justify the romance. Like, I would have been absolutely fine if they were just two agents in the field helping each other out as, completely like platonic, friends, brothers and sisters in arms kind of thing. So but I know that you've got to have Bond getting with the Bond girl. I understand that you've got to have that, but I just don't feel like the chemistry was there. Even in the moments where they're like showering together, and the bits on the bike where she's like, oh, don't get ahead of yourself, Bond, and everything like that. It's like, it's like very trite stuff. I just don't see it there. So I don't know if that was a fault of the acting between the two of them, whether it was the script or what it was. I don't really feel like we got enough scenes of them to really show the personality. It's all about kind of like the job at hand, the task. And you don't really, and then they kind of just throw that romance angle in really quickly at the end, just because that it's a Bond film and we have to have that, Carl says the helicopter with the blades facing the crowd looked great on the big screen. Yeah, and I mean, I watched it for the first time last year on the small screen, and that whole sequence just blew me away. I love the jump over the helicopter blades from rooftop to rooftop. But yeah, that one with when it angles the blades down, it reminds me of General Grievous, when he's like spinning the blades after Obi-Wan. I know this came out before that, but it kind of reminded me of that a little bit watching it again. It's a fantastic sequence. It really is. It's probably the best in the film for me, along with the pre-title sequence. Let's talk Jonathan Pryce as Elliot Carver, the horrible megalomaniacal media mogul. Try saying that 10 times fast. I know I sure can't. He's one of my favorite Bond villains. I absolutely love Elliot Carver, and to me, that is what makes this film unique, is its villain and the angle that they go with the villain. I get around that time, you have Rupert Murdoch, I think the character was based on. I think there was another guy that the character was based on as well. But you've got like the whole CNN News and Sky News and everything like that, and it's clearly modeled after that kind of stuff. It's such an interesting angle for a Bond villain, and I think it works fantastically well. It modernizes that Bond villain stereotype, that character type, and brings it into the modern era and puts a modern spin on it that absolutely works perfectly, in my opinion. And you still have like the threat of World War III in the film, and pitting two countries against each other, but you have it as that backdrop as sort of like our modern news, and we see it now on the news and everything, like the level of scaremongering that goes on and the choice words and everything, and it's you can never really trust it because it is so corrupt, across the board. It really is. So you never know what to trust. And Jonathan Pryce just looks like he's having the time of his goddamn life as this character. I think originally they were going to cast Anthony Hopkins. I think he was offered the role originally, but he passed it up to work on The Mask of Zorro, as indeed. Oh God, I've forgotten his name now. Oh my God, I've forgotten his name. The guy who directed GoldenEye, who also did Casino Royale. I've forgotten the name of the director. I feel really shit now. But he passed up the opportunity to direct this film because he wanted to do Mask of Zorro. So there's a Mask of Zorro thing going on there with some of its cast and crew. But Jonathan Pryce he is chewing so much scenery and he is having the time of his life doing it. The best scenes for me with Jonathan Pryce are the bit, as I mentioned, where he goes into that martial arts thing. But anytime he just gets to monologue, the bit where he's talking to like all of the people on the screens and he says like, right, what's on the news today? What stories have we got for me? Like coming at me from the US, what news have we got going on? Where he's typing absolutely nothing on this keyboard and he's writing his headlines and everything. It's really great stuff. He's brilliant. He's genuinely brilliant. He's one of my favorite Bond villains. Gets a really grisly death as well, and some of the camera work on him as well. I love the zoom ins on his character where he's in a darkly lit room and you've got the glow of the monitors kind of on his face, and he's just looking really sinister, like he's not blinking. He's focused on what he needs to do. And yeah, he's just a complete nutcase, isn't he? When he says there's a fine, what does he say? The difference between insanity and genius is that, is it a genius always succeeds or something like that? I'm paraphrasing there, but he has a lot of good lines in there. And delicious. He loves using the word delicious, which is it's so great. I think he's absolutely brilliant in this. I can't say enough positive words about him. And then of course you've got the Stamper, Richard Stamper, the Germanic henchman character. Not a lot to say about him, but he's imposing. He fits the stereotype as the henchman in the Bond franchise. He certainly isn't the first blonde Germanic henchman that we've had in the Bond franchise. But there is a villain I want to talk about in this. And he's played by Vincent Schiavelli, and I have to talk about this character. My favorite characters in the Bond franchise are the really random, oddball, could be a Grand Theft Auto character type characters that almost kind of feel out of place in the film they're in, or they're like super sleazy and just like absolute son of a bitches, but they might only be in the film for a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes tops, sometimes even less. But the impact they have on the film is testament to their character acting. And I want to talk about Dr. Kaufman. Dr. Kaufman, the first time I watched this last year, his character felt so out of place and so silly. And we just had this really serious moment where one of the loves of Bond's life, and Elliot Carver's wife, has just been killed on the bed, and there's this really tender moment where Bond goes to her body and he's like, trying to comfort himself. He can't believe that this has happened again. He's carrying a lot of pain with him. And then this really camp German assassin shows up. And he's like, I best take the cell phone. Yeah, I could shoot you from Stuttgart and have the same effect. And I was like, who the fuck is this guy? It's like we've entered a different film. It's like this really campy romp now with this German hitman. And he's bloody fantastic. And I love it. All my favorite Bond characters in the past, Professor Joe Butcher, for example, really random character, but just so memorable to me. And this guy, Dr. Kaufman's kind of in the same vein as that for me. The bit where they can't get into Bond's car and they call him on the cell phone, and he's like, I feel very embarrassed right now, but can you please tell me how to get into your car? I feel like an idiot. It's yeah. Apparently he's a master at what he does. Like, he tortures people. He's a master of chakra torture, and he's particularly good at the celebrity overdose. It's a character with such vast history, and I almost want a spin-off. I want a spin-off on Dr. Kaufman to know everything that he's done in his life. He's a fascinating character to me. He's just a professional. That's a great line as well, when he's like, I'm just a professional doing a job, and Bond's like, so am I. Bang, like, just shoots him in the head. Great moment. But yeah, I love his character. And what I totally forgot was that the henchman, Stamper, had a history with Dr. Kaufman, and I thought Dr. Kaufman like showed up in his scene. He does what he does. He's a really fun sort of pantomime character, and then he gets shot in the head and he's out of the film. I totally forgot the whole backstory stuff with Stamper's character and Dr. Kaufman, and it resurrected Kaufman for me in that moment. I was like, oh my god, as if he wasn't a really interesting character to begin with, he's now got an even richer backstory. So apparently he was like a father to me. Dr. Kaufman was a father figure to Stamper, and Kaufman taught Stamper everything he knew about chakra torture, and he's got like a whole like gift box of different torture devices. He's fantastic. Carl says the innuendo's got a big laugh in my screen. In Pumper for information, we'll never get away with that now. Yeah, and it's a shame we can't get away with that now, because it's just fun. It's lighthearted. It's not meant to be mean spirited in any way, and that's the Bond character. And Dame Judi Dench, M is aware of that. She's like, use anything that you've got to get the information, no matter what it is. Which is why, jumping ahead to Skyfall real quick, I love that line where Silver's trying to break down Bond. He's trying every trick in the book because he was a fellow agent as well. He knows Bond's modus operandi. Like, he knows how he functions and how he works and what he responds to, and he's trying to break him down. He goes for he talks about his allegiance to Queen and country and to M, and he tries to break that down, and that doesn't work. So then he tries to play into his sexuality and tries to unease him by, he's like groping him and coming onto him to try and unease Bond. And Bond says, like, what makes you think this is my first time? Because that makes sense to me. Like, in the field, in a mission, like, Bond may have had to have swung both ways to get information out of someone. That just seems like a plausible thing that an agent would have to do. So yeah, when M's like, she's really emotionally disconnected, dispassionate, and she's like, oh yeah, well, you've got to get information out of her. So if you've got to fuck her to get information, you go fucking do it. That's your job. It's fine. Like, no one kicked off about this shit until recently. It just bothers me that it's just escapism, But I agree with you. Yeah, now it would certainly raise eyebrows, wouldn't it, if people said that. But yeah, we had women at my screening today, and they were fine. They were loving it. They were laughing at all the lines and everything. It's just people just need a sense of humor. It's not everything's meant to be taken seriously. It's a guy who's trying to create World War III with a giant submarine drill thing. Like, calm the fuck down. It's just a bit of fun. Anyway, what was I saying? With some of the characters that I didn't talk about. Yes, anyway, the villains, really, really cool. Dr. Kaufman, fun. Love Judi Dench as M. Whilst we're on the topic of that, she's brilliant. Yeah, and actually one of the best things that I think carried over into the Daniel Craig films was continuing Judi Dench as M, because 4 films is not enough for Judi Dench as M. She really makes the role her own, and I just love her fiery, sassy personality. How she puts people in their place. She will always talk back, but and I mentioned this last week in GoldenEye, where she talks about, if I'm going to send you to your death, like, I don't care. I'm emotionally disconnected. Like, it's got nothing to do with me. It's all about the job at the end of the day. But then by the end of it, she's like, come back alive. She cares about her men in the field deep down. It's maybe not all of them, but especially Bond. She cares about him. And, you know, if he were to die, that would really gut her. Like, you can see that in her expression at the beginning of this film where she thinks, you know, she knows that he's trying to do his job and she's going to she wants him to get out of there. She can't make that happen herself, but she's hoping that he gets out of there. And that's why I really, really like a character. I want to talk about Q as well, because Desmond Llewellyn is the fucking man. He is so great. And I love his dynamic with Pierce Brosnan, because obviously Desmond Llewellyn, a lot older. That's how age works. You know, that's how time works. Noticeably a lot older. And the way that he plays off Brosnan feels almost like it's a grandfather talking to a grandson, and having that, you know, like bickering back and forth and everything, and having that banter between the two of them. It's a joy to watch. It really is. So I loved all of the Q stuff again. Samantha Bond as Moneypenny, there's just she's very nondescript for me as Moneypenny. I'm glad that they actually bothered to put her in the film at all, though. I'm glad that, because, you know, Moneypenny is part of the Bond family, but Samantha Bond, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I need to pay attention to the next two films, but she never really comes into her own as Moneypenny for me. And Lois Maxwell is just untouchable as far as I'm concerned. Like, that is the Moneypenny formula, and we just don't get enough of Moneypenny, I don't think. Not to say that Moneypenny was always around constantly in any of the Bond films, and I think if you ever did that with Moneypenny, then that would be a mistake. Looking at you, Spectre. Like, Moneypenny has her function in the story. M has her function in the story. They kind of set the ball in motion. They might occasionally keep cutting back to M to kind of chivvy Bond along, or the stakes change and there's more urgency, or there's less time, and it's like, you know, Bond, get the job done. That's all the character needs to function. You don't need them actually participating in the field constantly, which is, again, what Spectre did wrong, where you've got like a whole side quest going on, and it's like, why should I give a fuck about this? Let's just get back to Bond and the mission. But anyway, we're not talking about the Daniel Craig films just yet. So I think that's all of the characters, really, that are worth talking about for me. Suffice to say that I think it's one of the strongest villains. And just that media angle is so different from anything that we've seen in the Bond films so far, but yet still retains all of those qualities that we come to expect from, like, you know, this huge world-ending James Bond villain. So I love all the ingredients of this film, and it's got the gadgets, you know, it's got the GPS thing, it's got the car that's controlled, and that's a really interesting thing as well. You basically have a car chase in a completely unconventional way that we haven't seen before, and certainly hasn't been done in the Bond films, where it's all remote control. Usually we're seeing Bond behind the wheel and, you know, all of that stuff. So it's just really fun that he's in the back seat and he's using like a little keypad to do this whole elaborate car chase thing with all the bells and whistles. So yeah, it just has some, I think it might just be the second act that just slows down for me a little bit, and maybe that could do with the chemistry between the two leads. I just don't think it's there. So maybe that kind of throws the drag shoot a little bit when it comes to that second act. I didn't talk about Joe Don Baker. I completely forgot Jack Wade was back in this. I mentioned this last week that Joe Don Baker is fantastic as Jack Wade, kind of fills in that Felix Leiter type character, but I love his personality. I love how exuberant he is. I love how happy he is, and how American he is, and everything like that. He's great. As Jack Wade, he's brilliant. As the villain from Living Daylights, that was a completely that was a swing and a miss. It really was. He doesn't play a good Bond villain. I like the character's persona, but just as a villain for that Bond film to go up against Timothy Dalton, it just didn't work for me. It's easily the weakest thing about the Living Daylights for me. So I like that they gave him another shot to come back as a different character, and I think this is his last film as Jack Wade. I totally forgot he came back for this one in a couple of scenes, but I'm pretty confident that this is his last one, I think, out of all of them. So yeah, he's great. I love that bit as well when James Bond jumps out of the plane and they go like, oh shit, we're actually in like Vietnamese territory right now. And they say like, he didn't have any American insignia, did he? He's just like, yep, the outfit, the parachute, the this, the that, like everything. He's completely decked out in America. It's a shame because like when he throws the chute, I just wish it was like the Stars and Stripes. I actually can't remember if you see the parachute or not, but I was expecting like this really elaborate Team America World Police parachute or something. Oh God, what else can I talk about? I mean, I'm 44 minutes in, and I'm trying to. Oh God, the music. Let's talk about the music. We absolutely have to, because this is a whole section in and of itself. First and foremost, I've already mentioned it, but David Arnold to me is the successor to John Barry. That's not to say there hasn't been some other fantastic composers that have come on board and scored Bond films other than John Barry. Of course, that's not the case. There's been some brilliant soundtracks. License to Kill is one of my favorite soundtracks in the Bond franchise, and that wasn't done by either of them. So it isn't unheard of that other composers could come on, but to me, David Arnold is that successor. He modernizes the music very, very well, but he also retains all of those core sensibilities for a good Bond soundtrack. He has those really raunchy brass sections in there. He has it very melodic. He has a good sense of musical identity. There's themes throughout it that are woven in. You get love themes. You get the orchestral version of the main theme woven into it as well, which I will talk about in just a second. But I really paid attention more to the score this time. And now I've already seen the film and I know the whole story about the whole debacle with the main theme. Basically, the song that you hear in the end credits of this film, Surrender by K.D. Lang, that was written and that was all good to go in the can. That was ready to be the main theme for this film. And indeed, throughout the entire soundtrack, you hear reprises of that. You hear motifs from that main theme all the way throughout. You've got the brass section, that really raunchy. It goes like, na, 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 like that's all over the soundtrack. It's everywhere, and that's like the main hook. That's the main riff from the K.D. Lang song. Tomorrow never dies, like that melody, surrender. That's all throughout the score as well, and it really pisses me off that the producers of this film chose to go with it. And Carl, you've already said it here. I must admit, Sheryl Crow's song really didn't do much for me. The only reason that song exists is because at that time, who was more popular, K.D. Lang or Sheryl Crow? It was Sheryl Crow, right? We'll get her to do a song. And it annoys me because David Arnold and is it Don Black, I think it was, who came up with the lyrics for it. Whenever you have the composer working with the musical artist, the band, whoever it happens to be, that always produces the strongest Bond theme, in my opinion. When the actual composers had a hand in it, the two can work in collaboration and you can get orchestral arrangements of that main theme coming through. And that's what you would have had, because David Arnold wrote Surrender with K.D. Lang, and it's fucking fantastic. Honestly, might even be a contender for one of the best Bond songs. When you hear it, like K.D. Lang's vocals and that brass behind it, feels like a true successor in many ways that Tina Turner's was a true successor to that Shirley Bassey sound, that Shirley Bassey style vocal. It's so raunchy and sexy. Like, when that brass kicks in, it is absolute filth. It is pure sex when you hear that brass riff in it. And it plays over the credits. And I know you could say it's a part of the film, but its place belongs as the main theme for the film. Even the pre-title sequence has loads of moments where those musical cues are kicking in. And because now I've watched it for the first time, did some reading, obviously found out that K.D. Lang's song was meant to be the original song. Knowing that now, when I've watched it a second time tonight, I really focused on David Arnold's score. And if you could somehow just remove that Sheryl Crow song, replace it with K.D. Lang, this film would have one of the strongest musical identities out of any of the James Bond films, second to none. Just in terms of that consistency with the music, and compared to the John Barry scores, Living Daylights, for example, where you've got not only the Living Daylights by a-ha, but you've got The Pretenders, Where Has Everybody Gone? Two musical themes that are woven throughout the score. It's a really consistent soundtrack, and all of the best Bond films do that. All of them. Which brings us on to Sheryl Crow. I guess I've said everything that I need to already about it, but this is one of my least favorite Bond themes. not just the fact that it's an absolute laborious, melancholy, terrible song to agonize through. It feels overly long. It's not a melody that's particularly pleasing to my ears. It's got some of the ingredients of a Bond song. I'm not going to say it's a complete lost cause. You've got those, descending chromatic notes in there, which are very akin to the James Bond sound, and you hear it loads throughout. It has that, and I guess there's a place for a song like that, and it does feel Bond-esque, but within this film, it doesn't fit. There's no musical identity because that theme was thrown in at the 11th hour. The film already had a musical identity with the K.D. Lang song, and then this one comes in and is thrown in there, and it doesn't do much for me either, Carl, and it doesn't do much for me either because it isn't bolstered by the score, because it was never meant to be there in the first place. It's only there just because Sheryl Crow was popular at the time, was really popular, and would probably shift more singles than K.D. Lang would. That's the long and short of it. So yeah, it's just really shit, and I would love to see an edit of this film that it's so slight. You could say, well, it doesn't change the film, but to me, it's like the Bond theme. That's your lead into the film. You want it to be all guns firing. So if I could find a fan edit of this film that the only thing it changes is move that K.D. Lang song to the intro, then you're onto a winner for me. And maybe remove some of the... There's a lot of really random slow-mo that kicks in at the end of this film. And I don't think it's throughout the film. It seems to just kick right in at the end. It almost felt like I was watching it like John Woo took over from the directing at the end of this film. There's some really fun comedic sound effects as well when Bond's getting beaten up by the henchman as... Jonathan Pryce is delivering his speech when he's going live. You can hear some of the sound effects. They're just like stock punch and kick sound effects. It's just really funny. The music, there were some other Bond themes that were considered as well. Apparently there were around 12 submissions, and I haven't heard all 12 of these. I don't even know if some of them are available to listen to. But you've got songs from bands and artists such as Swan Lee, Pulp, Saint Etienne, Mark Almond. I think the Pulp one is available. It's called Tomorrow Never Lies, and it might be one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my life. To this day, I don't think I've been able to sit through the whole song. It was on my Bond playlist because I wanted it to be a complete Bond experience and include every single song that was considered. And it was on my playlist, and because I never listened to it and because I hate it so much, I'd always skip it. I just deleted it off there because it's crap. So yeah, it's a really frustrating thing with the music with this one, but luckily David Arnold is one of the things they managed to carry over into a lot of the other Bond films that are to follow from this one. So yeah, all good on the music front. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can talk about. I guess I'll do final thoughts. Oh, I like that they update Bond's gun as well. We've got the new PPK, and I think that was actually the company. PPK had just made their new weapon, and they wanted to showcase it in the new Bond film. And it makes sense to me that Bond would keep up to date with like the latest vehicles. And I know he drives around in the Aston Martin, and the Aston Martin itself is an iconic car to Bond, but something's got to give along the way. He wouldn't still be driving around in a Relic, and I know that Relic's been gutted and been given like a souped up engine and everything like that, but it makes sense to me that he would be using the most modern weapons and everything like that. And it's cool. I like that they updated it. They kept it as the same branded weapon, but just a more up-to-date model of it, so that's quite cool. Final thoughts for me. I absolutely love this film. Certainly out of the Brosnan era. I was watching this film and I kept telling myself, like, do I enjoy this more than GoldenEye? And I think as the film's structured and the film's paced and the ingredients of it, I think it is more akin to a classic Bond film than GoldenEye is. But I think I'm just more entertained by watching GoldenEye, and I like the characters a lot more in GoldenEye. And that's not just because of Xenia Onatopp. That's everyone. That's Boris. That's Alec. That's Robbie Coltrane. Everyone. Every single character in GoldenEye is incredible. And there's a lot of cool characters in this one, but I think that this film is just let down a little bit for me with the chemistry between Michelle Yeoh and Pierce Brosnan. I just don't feel it's there. There isn't really that romance there. And when they do try and crowbar it in at the end, it just feels really out of place. The strengths of this film for me are the action set pieces, is the David Arnold score, And Jonathan fucking Pryce as the villain is incredible. He's genuine. I love the angle of that Bond villain. It felt so different, breath of fresh air, but still retained everything that's necessary for a classic Bond villain. Pierce Brosnan's in fine form. Probably the most comfortable he's been as the Bond character. I am going to have to check out, obviously, next week, The World Is Not Enough, just to make sure which is my favorite Brosnan performance. But I definitely feel he's a lot stronger as the character in this one than he was in GoldenEye. And yeah, I don't know why people don't talk about this one as much. I really don't. It opened at number 2 at the box office. It's the only one of the Brosnan films that didn't open at number 1, but that's what you get when you release it the same day as Titanic, which both have sinking ships in, which is really interesting, isn't it? So yeah, maybe there's the link there. I think that's everything that I can say on this film for right now. I don't want to make this, overly long than it needs to be. So yeah, I don't know why people don't talk about Tomorrow Never Dies as much, because I think it's a really good action film. It's a really good spy action film. It's got some fun, quirky characters in there. It's great action set pieces with a really interesting villain. So yeah, that's my review on Tomorrow Never Dies. In terms of the big screen experience, it's nothing outstanding to look at, I will say that. I mean, the action, the sound and the music and, action scenes like that are shot in camera are always good to see on the big screen. Of course it is. And I'm very grateful that I got the chance to see this on the big screen. But from the cinematography, there's no sort of beautiful sweeping, scenery and landscapes and exotic locations and everything like that. It's quite bare bones in terms of visuals and everything like that. But it's a Bond film. I'm always going to be grateful to see a Bond film on the cinema. It's tradition now, isn't it? It's tradition. Anyway, that'll do it for me. I'm very tired. I was going to actually stay up and play some piano. Oh, actually, on the topic of piano, I took myself to a library a couple of days ago. I can't remember the last time I set foot in a library, probably since university. And even that was just, for essays. But in terms of like my actual own enjoyment of reading, I can't remember the last time I've gone to a library, which makes me feel really bad because I think libraries are really important and need to keep going. And I checked a book out. And it's a piano book, and it's way beyond my current level. So I've looked at some of these songs. I'm like, there's no way that I can play anywhere near this. But I wanted to give it a go anyway. From all 24 films, so of course, this was made after Spectre came out, right? So it doesn't have No Time to Die in there. But yeah, it's got all the Bond themes in there, all of the main titles, and some of the orchestral ones as well. We've got obviously we've got the Monty Norman theme from Russia with Love, Matt Monro, and they've even got Bond Steals the Lecter in here as well, which is my favorite secondary Bond theme, I guess. I love that one. Goldfinger, Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, We Have All the Time in the World. It's literally got them all. So I want to give this a go. I want to give it a stab, even if it's very, very slow. Actually, you know what? This is going to be my 5-year goal. I'm going to say it now. My 5-year goal with piano is that I want to be able to play all 24, well, all 25. Hell, probably by that point. Maybe we'll have Bond 26. I don't know. I don't know what they're planning. Hopefully we'll have another Bond film by 5 years' time. But the way that Barbara Broccoli's going, who knows? Maybe we'll still be waiting. That's my 5-year goal, is to be able to play all those. So, yeah, I'm going to give it a go, I think. But anyway, side tangent. It's Bond related, so I thought I'd mention it. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone, for tuning in. Carl, you're the absolute man. Thank you for always tuning in, mate. It always helps as well, because it's like, oh, I am actually talking to someone. Someone is actually there. This is cool. So just, thank you for taking an hour out of your night again to listen to me prattle on about... I was going to say The World Is Not Enough. That's next week. Tomorrow Never Dies. And hopefully you had a good time at the cinema as well, watching it as well. Do subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams if you haven't done so already. There will be much more content coming in September. Probably more from the TV show side of things, actually. And as I said, an early screener for something, which I can't say what it is, and I can't give any more information than that, but something is coming, and it's going to be fucking awesome. So to find out more information about that awesomeness, when I can talk about it, do follow me on Twitter at HobbitFanEditor. I always post the times that I go live, and I will do so for the next Bond review. And who knows, maybe something else will come out. Maybe there'll be a trailer for something, or God forbid another Rings of Power featurette or something that I really need to talk about. There'll be something. When things crop up, and I've been really busy recently, guys, like really busy. So finding the time has been really tough. But if I get some downtime and there's something that I want to talk about, I'm passionate and I want to talk about it, I'll jump on and talk about it. In the meantime, let me know what you think of Tomorrow Never Dies if you haven't done so already, because I'm always interested in hearing your guys' opinion, and I'll always comment as well. Next week, The World Is Not Enough. I am very interested to revisit that one, because last time, from what I remember, there's a lot of things that I love about that film, and there's a lot of things that I dislike about that film. So hopefully next week, watching it for a second time, I'll get a fresh take, a fresh opinion on it, and I'll let you know whereabouts I stand on it. So The World Is Not Enough. That's next week, Tuesday, the 23rd of August at 11:30 p.m. British Standard Time. And also, let me know what your favorite James Bond film is and who your favorite actor to play Bond is. Maybe it's Brosnan and maybe it's Tomorrow Never Dies. Who knows? But yeah, Carl says, I have the Limitless card now, so should be able to watch along now for the reviews. That's awesome, man. You're coming in strong. I'm really sorry that you're going to have to watch Die Another Day. But hey, we're in it together. If I've got to watch Die Another Day, you've got to watch Die Another Day. That's fair. Yeah, it's honestly, mate, for the money, Limitless card, it's so worth it. And you get money off on snacks as well. Granted, the snacks are still really expensive, but you still get a discount, and every little bit helps. Yeah, there's actually some really good stuff that's coming to Odeon in the next few weeks. I was checking ahead. Now, I'm not a Star Trek fan, but I was actually curious to check these out. They've got I think it's the recent 4K director's cut of the original Star Trek The Motion Picture, which I've heard is a vast improvement on the original cut of it. You've got the director's cut of Wrath of Khan. Now, I have seen Wrath of Khan once, many, many years ago, but this is the director's cut version. I'm really tempted to go and watch those films, to go and watch the first two Star Trek films, but the OCD in me won't let me watch them. I know I said I've already watched Wrath of Khan, so I guess I've already gone back on my opinion on this, but if I get to them, I want to watch the original series first, and then they did the animated series, didn't they? And then they got onto the movies. So I'd want to watch it in sequence with that, so I could get a good handle of the characters and the relationships of the characters beforehand. So I might give those a miss, although I'm sure that they'll be absolutely incredible on the big screen. And then there's a couple of Spielberg films coming out as well. You've got the 40th anniversary of E.T., which, Jesus, 40 years. That's how time works, but it's still crazy just saying it like that. You got the 40th anniversary of E.T., and then they're doing a special 3D screening of Jaws. Now, this isn't Jaws 3D. This isn't the third Jaws film. This is the original Jaws film that must have been re-upscaled into 3D. I don't know how that's going to go over. I'd rather them just do a rescreening of Jaws, because I will absolutely be at that film. But it's in 3D, so who knows? Who knows? But I'll probably go to that. I think that's... is it next weekend that comes out, or is it the first week of September? I'm not sure. Might be the first week of September. I'll have to double check for that. But if I go to that, then maybe I'll jump on for a review for Jaws, because it's been a while since I've seen that film, and I'd like to get into the habit of that as well. If I go to another rescreening, I think this is when we talked about RoboCop last week, and of course I went to the rescreening of RoboCop, but I never jumped on and talked about it. So if you guys, if I do go to a rescreening of any random film, whatever it happens to be, if I'm taking myself to that rescreening, then it's clearly going to be a film that I'm passionate about and want to take the time out of my day to go and see. So maybe I'll get into the habit of that and start jumping on more, even if it's a shorter video, even if I'm not going for over an hour and I just talk about watching a rescreening of a film. So if you guys would be interested in that, do let me know, because I would like to do more on the channel. I know I'm kind of averaging like one video a week at the moment, but my schedule is very packed. I have a lot of stuff going on now outside of here, and this is just a hobby. I love talking about films. I have opinions on things that I want to share, whether you agree with them or not. And yeah, TV shows and films, I'm really passionate about them and I want to share my thoughts on them. So Carl says yeah, they're showing Jaws in IMAX if you have one nearby. I'm not actually sure where my nearby IMAX is. I think there's one in Birmingham, isn't there? Does that still count as an IMAX? Is that a full-blown IMAX now, I think? So yeah, I mean, that could be a possible. Definitely, I could get there. I think that's the closest IMAX to me. See what man says. Do you have random movies that air show on cable, or do you not have random movies that air show on cable? Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's films constantly on TV, isn't there? All the time. There's always random films going on. Hell, on Netflix, there's a bunch of films that I've never seen before that I really want to watch. So there's always random stuff out there. But yeah, anyway, I'm rambling. But suffice to say, Odeon's got some cracking stuff coming out, and we're getting very, very closer to Halloween as well. The month of October, which is my favorite month of the year. I'm going to try and have some stuff planned for October. Actually, I want to try going into some more horror stuff. So I'm fingers crossed. I'm hoping the cinemas play some classic horror films. Now, granted, when lockdown was a thing and just kind of after lockdown, Showcase and Odeon played a lot of horror films, a lot of classic horror films. So at the cinema already, I've seen Psycho, Exorcist, oh god, Nightmare on Elm Street. What else have I seen on the big screen? Hellraiser, Friday the 13th, Original Halloween. What else have I seen? I feel like I've seen some more as well. So I've seen a lot of classic horror films already. So if they kind of repeat that, oh, I've seen The Shining in the cinema as well. The extended version, actually, that caught me by surprise. But I've seen a lot. So I'm hoping they put some other ones that I haven't seen on, which would be cool to go and see. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling, but the point is I'm going to try and get more content to you guys as and when I can. I am trying. I fit it in when I can. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, but you know, I enjoy doing this. I really do. You know, these live streams, chatting with you guys, it's really good. It's a nice bit of escapism for me in you know, in what's otherwise a busy week, and I enjoy keeping in touch with you guys. It's kind of like the only chance that I get to do so, isn't it? So it's good. It's nice. I'm glad that we get to share our opinions on films and stuff, and we get to keep it going. So more stuff to come. So stay tuned. More stuff to come. You have my scout's word of honor. Anyway, I'm going to let you all go because it's getting on towards 1 a.m. in the UK and I'm very tired. I should do some piano practice right now, but I think I'm pretty much just going to head to bed because I'm absolutely wiped out. Another busy day again tomorrow. So hopefully you're all keeping well. Stay safe, stay excellent, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.